guys, and thank you so much to Joe for catching my eye. My normal table people left me today, so thank you so much for catching. Now I gotta figure everything out. So we are so excited again to have you guys here today. Um, we are so excited to have you guys here today. I know so many of you are here for the children, and we are so excited about that. But you also get to see me too. So it's double pleasure. So we are starting a brand new series today called Outlasters. And I was really excited when we were getting ready to do this sermon because it's so interesting how God kind of puts things together in your mind. Because this week I was reading just in my own reading of scripture, nothing to do with our sermon or anything. I was reading about in Kings how one of the kings, when he died, it said that his legacy was nothing, that he left nothing on after him. And I thought that was so interesting going with what we're talking about today, because some of us, when we think about leaving a legacy for our children or for our family, we talk a lot about financial things, that we want to leave, money for them. We want to have that insurance. We want to leave things for them. But I think it's so much more important to leave more than that for the people behind us, to leave our values, to leave what we believe in, to leave about who we are. If you've ever, as a pastor, we've kind of been more around funerals than most people might be. And sometimes after someone dies and you get their family together, what happens is they start to talk about that person that died. And more often than not, they'll talk about, oh, this was their favorite sports team. Or this was, remember that recipe that she used to always make. And those are great things to talk about. But when I leave this world, I want my family to be able to talk about more than that, more substance. And I will tell you, this week, I worked really hard, and I really studied, and I really researched. And it's really interesting to me, in my research this week, I discovered that 1 out of 1 people die. Think about that again. 1 out of 1 people die. And so all of us, at some point, are going to pass away and going to leave this world, hopefully, for eternal life. But what we leave is really important. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. We don't want to leave something worthless. And again, we're not talking about money, because money fades. We're talking about those important things that we leave behind us. And I know it's kind of morbid to talk about death. Some of us maybe are fearful of that. Maybe some of us just want to avoid that conversation altogether. But if we're not intentional thinking about what kind of legacy we are leaving, then what we leave will be worthless. So we want to live in such a way that we are outlasters. That's the name of our series. That we're going to outlast. That the next generations that come behind us will outlast what we left behind. And think about it, that as followers of Christ, if you are here today and you are a follower of Christ, it is your job to pass those values on to the next generation. The only reason that we're here today in a church is because 2,000 years ago, when Jesus died, there were people who passed his gospel, his good news along, and kept passing that along. They were outlasters, and that's the only reason we even know and that we have the word that we have today, and we have the church that we have today. Now, our key verse for this whole series over the next 4 weeks is coming from Psalms. And Psalms is a book that David wrote. David was a king, and so he would write beautiful stories. He would write when he was really upset with God. He would write when he was really happy with God. If you ever read through the Psalms, it's just kind of like this. His emotions are all over the place. But we're going to look at Psalms, but the chapter 112 and look at verses 1 through 4 and verse 6. How joyful are those who fear the Lord and delight in obeying his commands. Their children will be successful everywhere. And we're going to look at what that word successful means. An entire generation of godly people will be blessed. If the next generation does not follow Christ, then we have failed. That is our one job for the next generation. They themselves will be wealthy. Their good deeds will last forever. They are generous, compassionate, and righteous. Those who are righteous will be long remembered. You'd pray with me, please. God, thank you so much for the word that you have given us today. Thank you for the parents, the grandparents, the aunts, the uncles, everybody that was here today for these children, and just to be here to listen to what you have to say to them. I want to speak not just to, of course, to our regular congregants that are here, but also to those that are pouring into the lives of children to see what you want us to hear today and what you want us to pass on to the next generation. Be with us today in your name. Amen. So today, you might be a parent. Shout out to the grandparents that are here today. Happy Grandparents' Day. You might not have any children. You might be a child yourself, but we are all called to pour into people and to teach people about Jesus. So even if you're not a parent or a grandparent today, this message and over the next few weeks are for you. Now, if you've ever heard about the third generation problem, historians have looked at this problem and they've called it the third generation problem. And what that means is it's difficult for anything to be passed down for 3 generations. They've looked at wealth, they've looked at business, they've looked at values, they've looked at all different kinds of things. And it's hard for things to be passed down to the third generation. In fact, 10% of family businesses make it past the third generation. And what they say is that first generation starts it, the second generation runs it, and the third generation ruins it. So we're going to look at that. If we think about the first generation, with the first generation comes some strong leadership. They have some progress. They have spiritual growth. They are the ones that have been through it, and they are the ones that created those things. Maybe they changed their family, and they started going to church. Their values changed. Maybe they created the business. Maybe they got some kind of intellectual or economic growth. They are the creators. They are the starters. They are the ones the beginners. Then the second generation comes, and they have inherited that from that first generation. They might appreciate it, but they didn't have to go through it. They didn't have to go through the fire of being able to get whatever it is. So their job, they feel, is to protect what they have. They don't create anything new. They don't, have these big ideas. They're not going on. They just want to protect what they have. So then this third generation comes along, and all the third generation has seen is protecting the status quo, to keep in check what already is. They haven't seen passion. They haven't seen innovation. They haven't seen what got us to where we are. So then they start to reject those values. They start to see things as not important. And their attitude, their passion declines on whatever it is. And we see this in the Bible. In the Old Testament, when the Israelites were first taken away from Egypt, we have Joshua and Moses, who are these strong commanders. And they fought these battles, and they went through the wilderness, and they were so close to God, and they had all these amazing stories that they would just go back to God all of the time, and all these things would happen. And they took the Israelites into the promised land, and they knew it was all because of God. Well, when the second generation came along, they just wanted to protect. If you read very much about that in the Old Testament still, that second generation, they just wanted to protect their land. There were lots of battles, there were lots of things, but many times they didn't turn to God. They might have heard some of the stories and had some appreciation, but they basically were just there to protect what they had. So then the third generation comes along, and they don't even look at God. They start looking at other gods. They start looking at the things that people have around them. They don't know the fight that it took to get there, and they don't know what their identity is. In fact, in Judges 21:25, when looking at this third generation, it reads, "In those days, Israel had no king, and all the people did whatever seemed right in their own eyes." And to me, I told our dream team earlier, this is going to be a little bit of a Gen X sermon today. So forgive me, because that's what I am. But to me, it seems like as I look around our culture today, that could be said for our culture today, is that everybody just does whatever seems right in their own eyes. There is no leader. There is no truth. So what we're going to look at today is the third generation's biggest challenge. What is this challenge? And I told you this is going to be a sermon, a Gen X sermon, but it's actually going to be for us what we have done wrong in leading the next generation. So we're going to look at 3 things that we need to do better if we are going to lead this next generation. If these amazing, I think about our worship team. I think about our staff, that half of our staff is in their 20s and early 30s. That really half of our church is in their 20s and early 30s. So that those people that are coming up need something different than what we have given them if this is going to go on. So the first thing that we have done wrong is we have risked too little. Now, at my age, and how many people, I'm going to turn 50 this year, so just, I know it's bad to ask people your age and things, but anybody in that 40s, 50s-ish age, okay? See, we got a few, and you can see our hands up. You can see how young our church is, too. So we have just a few. Well, in my day, we walked to school, or you had to walk a half a mile to the bus stop. Uphill all the way. That was my dad. My dad had to walk uphill both ways. He was a little bit older. But we could roam our whole neighborhood, and we had no cell phone. We had no Life 360, so our parents could check where we were. It was just basically go out. When you see the street lights come on, come back. And our parents didn't really want us back until the streetlights came on. It wasn't really for us. It was actually probably more for them. They wanted us gone until the streetlights came back on. We would drink straight from the hose. If you would have somebody filling up their little pool in the back, you could drink from the hose. We just didn't have some of those thoughts that people have today. How many of you have ever ridden in the back of a pickup truck? We had the back of the pickup truck with your hair blowing, or my dad also had the back of a pickup truck that had a camper on it, and I would love to go by myself in the back, and this was my dad. My dad was he was 54 when I was born, so he was a little bit older, but he would go on the curves on the west side and just let me fly around in the back of the pickup truck because it was so much fun. It had a camper, so it wasn't going to fly out. But that was fun for us. You would sit in the front seat with no seat belt. I know we went all the way to Texas one time, and I don't remember it, but I've seen pictures of it where I was under 2 years old sitting on my mom's lap on the front seat all the way to Texas. You had no seat belt, but your seat belt was your mom's arm. And that is probably still true in some ways today. Excuse me, even if I'm riding with Mark, sometimes I do the same thing. I did hear a joke, and I'm sorry, but I did hear that the person who created the first airbag used to ride around with his grandma, and his grandma had a little bit of extra skin right here, so when she would knock him out, he got the idea because he would see all that fat all that thing coming towards him, and he was like, airbag, that would help us out. So that was kind of back in our day. We didn't have a lot of those safety measures, a lot of things that protected us. But today is very different. Now, I'm just going to preface this with, since we have a lot of daycare families here, I am no longer the director of the daycare. So when I talk about some things about children, if you're upset, Carrie Speth is now the director. The Well Daycare Ministry is her. Feel free to email her, but I'm out. So what we do today is if one child falls down on a playground equipment, that playground equipment is bad. We've got to remove that whole thing. We're not going to let them fall down. We do have one child who's broken about 7 bones, I think, in the last year that is here. He's good. So we have, not at the daycare, I will say that too, not at the daycare. We have teachers now that are not allowed to use red pens. I used to be an English teacher before I was a pastor. They're not allowed to use red pens anymore because that is hurtful. If we see that things are wrong on a paper, we talk about a different way to do it better, but they're not wrong in what they do. We also assure that no child ever loses anything. I know we have a lot of our families that have kids in soccer and in hockey and all of these things. When I was a child and I tried to play t-ball, I was terrible. I got hit on first base with the ball and broke my ribs because I didn't know I was supposed to run. So I was terrible. I did not deserve a trophy for being there. We didn't get one. But today, if you show up, you get a trophy because you participated. And I'm not saying all of these things are wrong or we should, stop doing all of these things. I'm just saying that as this generation has grown up, that there hasn't been a lot of risks. We haven't allowed them to fail. We haven't told them, you're an awesome person, but you're just not very good at that. If you've watched American Idol, some of the tryouts, that's where we are. Someone should have told those people, you can't sing. Don't do this. And that's kind of what has happened to this generation is that we want to build confidence. We don't want to hurt people or make them think that they're worthless at all. But there's the reality that some people are great in some things, some people aren't. We can't protect you from everything. Because what happens is when this generation grows up, they don't know how to fill out application forms. They're scared. One of the things I have learned at the daycare is that when I was 16, I was counting down the days to get my driver's license. I could not wait to get in a car and leave my house. But there are so many teenagers right now that are scared to drive, scared to learn how to be in a car by themselves. They're afraid to interview. Anxiety is at an all-time high. And I don't think it's the only reason, but I think part of the reason is because we have allowed them to be too protected. We have to allow the next generation to fail at some things so they build up that toughness that says, you know what? I can get over this. I can make it through this. With God, I can get through anything. The second thing that we have done, so first of all, we have risked too little with them. The second thing that we have done with this next generation is that we have rescued too quickly. So it's time for your child to do their science project. They've known for 3 months that their science project is due tomorrow. When they come to you at 10 o'clock and need to make a Walmart run for all of the supplies, say no. Say, if you would have asked me 3 months ago, then we could have done this. Or we go, I know when my kids are older now, I have adult children, but I know when we would go to school and see the science fair, I would look around and I would be like, your mom did that. Your dad did that. I know you. There's no way that you did those things. And so we rescue them when they have projects or things. Doesn't mean we don't ever help them or we don't ever, we're a family. We're supportive of them, but we don't rescue them from those things. If you forgot your jacket, you're going to be cold today. That's how we need to treat our kids sometimes. Doesn't mean all the time, but sometimes we need to realize you forgot to bring your lunch today. Sorry. Figure it out. Ask a friend. Figure out what you're going to do today, because those are small problems today, and if we rescue them from every small problem they have today, when they get older, they're not going to be able to figure out how to deal with those bigger problems. And I don't want you to hear what I'm not saying. I'm not saying, drop your 4-year-old off and don't give them any food or clothes or anything like that. I'm just saying, if that attitude continues and we continue to rescue, we're always bringing lunch, we're always bringing whatever they need. We're always rescuing them from everything, and that is a continual behavior on our part. All we are doing is hurting this next generation. We're not allowing them to figure out how to rescue themselves or to figure out how to go to God and how just to go to resources in the world around them to help them. We have to help not just our children, but the people that we are mentoring to figure out natural consequences. Because in life, we are all sinners. And when we sin, when we have things that we mess up, even when God forgives us, if we go to him, he will forgive us for anything. But there will still be natural consequences that happen. We have to prepare this next generation to be able to face those natural consequences. And the third thing, we risk too little, we rescue too quickly, and the last one is we reward too frequently. We should give the next generation the things that they earn. There are times that they do amazing things. They are amazing people. They work hard, and so they should earn and receive rewards. But what I see happening lately is 3-year-olds have an allowance that they get to spend. 3-year-olds should not have to earn any allowance and should not be given that for them. I'll see kids come in with $100 shoes when they're 5 years old. They're just going to go play in the mud with those. You don't need to worry about $100 shoes on little children. And we see 8-year-olds having cell phones, too. They haven't earned these things. And there's a whole different sermon that I could give on social media, on being able to have young children get on the internet, what happens to them when we allow that freedom too young. But they have these things that they didn't earn, so it's hard for them to appreciate those things. And then sometimes as parents or as mentors to them, we get upset because we think, well, I got you this, I'm giving you this, you don't even appreciate it. Well, they don't, because they didn't earn it, because we just gave it to them. We are not training them to be patient and to work and to earn those things that they have. And what happens is that when they get in their 20s and they're out on their own, their expectation is to have the same lifestyle that their parents had that took them 30 years to get to. And so then they go in debt. They have all kinds of, again, we've talked about anxiety. They have all of these things that are going on because their expectation is that things will just be given to them because that's what we have shown them. That's what we have told them. And we might say, I just want my kids or the people around me to have more than I had. That is an amazing thing to want. And all of these things that I'm saying today come out of a heart of love for the next generation. I don't think any of us are trying to do anything to harm the way this next generation is going. It's because we love them, because we care for them. Maybe some things in our past we felt like we haven't been taken care of in certain ways. So we are overcompensating by taking care of the next generation in a different way. So don't hear me say that any of those are coming out of a bad place. They're all coming out of a great place. But we have to change our mindset that what we are doing, instead of bowing down at the altar of God, we are bowing down at the altar of happiness. We are doing everything we can to make the next generation happy. But God did not say, be happy as I am happy. What he did say was, be holy as I am holy. And I know that what we've talked about so far today is very practical and maybe doesn't sound super biblical or spiritual yet, but I wanted to give us a basis for what we're going to be talking about in the next upcoming weeks, what we are giving. And so we have to switch that mindset that for us, if you are a follower of Christ, your only job to your children, to your family, to people that you mentor, your only job is for them to follow Jesus. And that does not mean that they are going to be happy all of the time. But it does mean we are going to do everything we can to show them what it means to be holy. There's no other person, and this is going to sound like a card or like some thing we're going to pass out, but there is truly no other person, nothing else in this world that can fill you like Jesus Christ can fill you. His love, his grace, the purpose that he gives you, there is nothing else that can fill that. So when we are telling our kids to be happy, and we are rescuing them, we are rewarding them with worldly things, maybe not intentionally, but we are telling them, this will make you happy. This is better than Jesus. This is what you need. And I believe that is not what we want to be telling our children. Because down the road, just like we looked at that third generation, they're not going to care. Because they're going to realize, this isn't right. This is not what fills me. Happy. These things are not what makes me happy. True happiness, what the Bible calls joy, comes from living a life of purpose in Jesus Christ. What he puts in you, the things that he gives you. We're doing 201 today, and we're going to be doing 301 next week. We talk about those special gifts that God gives you, and all of us are different in what he has given us. But true joy comes from serving him in those things. That's where the true joy, the true happiness comes. Not from being given things, not from, trophies that we get for being in soccer when you're 4 years old. Not any of those things. Just in Jesus Christ. Remember our opening verse. It said, if we teach the next generation about Christ, they will be generous. They will be compassionate. And most of all, they will be righteous. We need to worry less about today's happiness so we can worry more about tomorrow's readiness. Our job is to make the next generation ready for the things that are to come. Now, like I said, you don't have to be a parent, you don't have to be a grandparent. These messages are for everyone. So I just want us to look, like I said today, we just kind of laid this basis of looking at who we are and what we are presently passing on. So I feel bad because today I kind of gave you the problems that are going on without a ton of solutions yet. But over the next few weeks, we're going to be looking at some of these solutions. Next week, we're going to be looking at how to create a wealth that matters and how to teach our children to take care of money and to take care of those resources so they will have the ability to be generous when God calls them to be generous. September 22nd, which is kind of a break in this series, just side note, is our 10th birthday, like Pastor Mark was saying. So we're so excited about that. So hopefully you come back for that. That's going to be a little break in the series. Then the next week, we are going to talk about how to create a hunger in that first generation. And we said that first generation are the people today that are just wanting more. So if we look at the next generation as going back to the first generation, we're going to look at how to create that hunger. And then the very last week, we're going to look at how to cultivate an internal drive and that passion to tell others about the only thing that will bring them joy, the only thing that will fill them up. And if you are here today and you are not a follower of Christ, there's lots of times that I've said today, if you're a follower of Christ, this is your mission. If you're a follower of Christ, but if you are not a follower of Christ, in just a few minutes, we're going to give you a moment to choose that. And I just want to tell you, I know we're in church. Some of you might go to church all the time. Some of you, this might be just a once in a, when your kids are performing, you come. But Jesus was a real person. He was God's son who came down for us, and he saw all of us. He knows about those secret things that you do. He knows about those not so secret things that you do. And he just loves you so much. And you don't need to clean up to have him love you. You can come to him exactly as you are today, with all of that junk still in you. And he will say, I created you, I love you, I made you, and I will fill you up, and I will help you along the way. So if you guys would go ahead and bow your heads. Jesus, today, just thank you so much. I, as one of these older generations, first just repent for the ways that I have treated and the things that I have done out of love, but honestly out of ignorance for our next generation. Help me and help us to just realize what we need to pour into them and the ways that we need to change. But I want just your spirit right now to fall onto some of these people. And if there is anybody here today who feels that anxiety, who feels that loss, who feels a hole that they have been trying to fill with just happiness, bowing down at that altar of happiness. But today you want to choose to fill that with Jesus, with your Creator, with the person that loves you more than anything. If you want to choose that today, if you just raise your hand. Okay. You see, I see quite a few around the room. And what we do here is we are a family here, so we want to, for just loving me. Thank you for dying for me. Thank you for forgiving me. I want you to come into my heart today. And I want you to fill that space. Help me to follow you from now on. In your name, amen.